Good afternoon, dear students. Today we shall see about teaching of vocabulary. English language has a vast vocabulary and there are about 1 million words in English which are given in most of the standard dictionaries. Since it is not possible to learn all the words in English, a list of words which we need are often in speech, writing, reading is to be selected and learned. To master the English vocabulary, we have to listen to good English and we have to read good English to acquire some vocabulary for speaking and writing. Okay, we shall see about the importance of vocabulary and the different types of vocabulary and selection and gradation of vocabulary in this video. Essentials of vocabulary. Learning vocabulary is very important part of learning a language. The more words we know, the more we will be able to understand what we hear and read. Okay, and vocabulary is the main tool for students to use English language effectively. And vocabulary helps students to express themselves more precisely and sharpens communication skill. It also requires students to cognitive academic language proficiency. The teaching of vocabulary is important because without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed to others. The teacher has an essential role in helping students to improve vocabulary. So the teacher has a very important role in helping the students to develop vocabulary. Why? Because without vocabulary, the students cannot express themselves more precisely and sharpen their communication skills. So vocabulary is very essential for the conveying a message from ourselves to others. Okay. Next is types of vocabulary, and we have two types of vocabulary. One is active vocabulary and the other one is passive vocabulary. So first we will see what is active vocabulary. So active vocabulary is otherwise called as working vocabulary. Okay, so active vocabulary is otherwise called as working vocabulary because we use active vocabulary in our day-to-day life. Okay, so active vocabulary consists of those words a person uses in his daily life in speech and writing. So active vocabulary are nothing but the words which a person uses in his life in speech and writing. He understands the meaning of those words, and these are the words which the students have been taught and learnt, in which they are able to use it while speaking and writing. Okay, so English words, terms, expressions and idiomatic expressions you can easily use when writing or speaking without stopping is called as active vocabulary, and passive vocabulary is otherwise called as recognition vocabulary. Passive vocabulary consists of all the words that the learner understands when reading or listening but do not use them or cannot remember when speaking and writing. Okay, these words are not used by the learners actively in speech and writing. They are very rarely used. Okay, whenever he comes across such words, he is able to recognize them. Passive vocabulary is nothing but the person knows the word but he will not use those words in his day-to-day life. So active vocabulary are words which we use day-to-day life, and passive vocabulary, we know what is the meaning of that word and we know what is the where that word should be used, but we will not use it in our day-to-day life. Okay, that is passive vocabulary. And the active vocabulary of one person may be the passive vocabulary of another person. Okay, so if a word is active vocabulary for me, that word can be a passive vocabulary for you. Okay, a word which is an active vocabulary for you can be a passive vocabulary for me. So that depends on the person. That depends on the person and his strength of the vocabulary. Okay, and some words will suddenly become active and some words will suddenly become passive. That also depends on the usage of the person. So if a person uses that word very often, it will stay as an active vocabulary. If that person is using it very rarely, and it will become as a passive vocabulary. For example, for 1 year I will be using the some particular words regularly, and at that period it will be the active vocabulary for me. And later, after the year or after some time, I will not use that particular word. So the particular active vocabulary has become as a passive vocabulary after some time. This may also happen in the usage of words. Okay, so do you understand what is active and passive vocabulary? So I will give you some example. So active vocabulary, enemy, the word enemy is the active vocabulary, and the word antagonist. So antagonist is also the meaning of enemy. So enemy will be the active vocabulary and antagonist will be the passive vocabulary. Okay, and meanings, the word meaning is an active vocabulary and synonyms is a passive vocabulary. So like this we have some different words. You should find out the examples of active and passive vocabulary. Next we will see what is content and structural words. Words that have a concrete meaning is called as content words. For example, noun, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns are called as content words. For example, the name of a thing and some action, qualities. So such vocabularies are called as content words. For example, table, walk, beautiful, bus. Okay, so these words are called as content words. And structural words, they are also called as functional words. Words that do not have a concrete meaning are called as structural or functional words, and they have some grammatical meaning. So they will not have some concrete meaning, but they will have some grammatical meaning. So these are called as structural words. For example, auxiliary verbs, preposition, etc. are called as functional words. For example, the words like can, will, to, in, whether, and. So such words are called as structural words or functional words. Next we shall see about the selection and gradation of vocabulary. So it is well known fact that to master language one should have the knowledge of vocabulary, but learning all the words in a language is really a difficult thing, and therefore every learner has to choose the vocabulary which they have to learn. Okay, for difficult stages of learning a language, vocabulary has to be selected and graded according to the ability of the students. Okay, so the following were the principles of selection and gradation of vocabulary. So first we will see about the principle of selection of vocabulary. So the first one is usefulness of a word. So the word selected should be useful for the learner and should not be above the mental level of him. Words which are not immediately needed for the learner should be kept for the later stage. So whichever word is immediately needed, that should be taught first, and which is not needed, that should be kept for the later stage. For example, words such as read, sit, eat, stand, etc. can be selected, and some words like honest, terror, attitude, so those words can be taught in the later stage. Okay, and the next one is frequency of a word. So the word which are most frequently used in speech and writing should be selected. The other words can be left out, not left out, it can be kept for the later stage. And the third one is structural value of a word. So structural words help in forming sentences by linking the content word. So some words have more structural value than the other, so such words should be selected. So some words will be having more structural value. For example, words such as and, but, because, so such words can be selected for the beginning stage. Okay, and the next one is universality of a word. So the words which have universal significance can be taught first, and such words which have universal value can be selected. For example, words like democracy, politics, terrorism, so such words are universal significant word, so those words can be taught first, taught in the earlier stage. And and also some difficult words which have universal value can be taught in the later stage too. Okay, and the next one is range of applicability. So a particular word can be used in more than one situation. Okay, a particular word can be used in more than one situation, and such words should be taught with different situations and with various examples. Okay, and the next one is productivity of a word. There are some words out of which more number of words can be produced by adding prefix and suffix. So such words which have more productivity can be selected. For example, the word courage, so it can be used as encourage, discourage, courageous, courageously, encouragement. So a particular word can be producing more number of words, so such words can be selected and taught to the students. And the next one is regional value of a word. So while selecting vocabulary, it should be seen whether the word is apt for that particular region. Okay, some words need not to be introduced in the remote area. For example, there is no meaning in introducing names of food items such as burger, hot dog, etc. in remote area. So they might not see the burger or hot dog in a remote rural area. So in such a case, those words can be avoided for introducing to the students. Okay, so these are some of the principles for selection of vocabulary. Next we will see about the gradation of vocabulary. So next is principle for grading vocabulary. So the first one is simplicity. So grading vocabulary is nothing but so which word should be taught first and which word should be taught second, which word should be taught third, and which word should be taught fourth. So in selection we have selected some 10 vocabulary which we are going to teach. So in gradation we should order those 10 words. We should order those 10 words which have been selected for teaching. Okay, so in gradation the first one is simplicity. So simplicity is nothing but words which are simple in spelling and pronunciation can be taught first. Next is immediate utility. So immediate utility is nothing but immediate usage. So words which are more useful for the students at the immediate moment can be taken up first, and later things can be taught later. And next is structural value. Words having more structural value should be taken up first, and the words having less structural value can be kept for the later stage. Okay, and the next last one is teachability. So teachability is nothing but the words which can be taught in the class, with the simple examples which is prevailing inside the classroom should be taught first, and the words which needs some more examples and some demonstrations, some imaginary situation should be taught in the later stage. Okay, so these are some of the principles of grading a vocabulary. So the next heading is expansion of vocabulary. So expansion of vocabulary is nothing but how can we expand our vocabulary in our among our students. So we can expand the vocabulary of our students by showing pictures or audiovisual aids, real objects, models, etc., and miming or performing an action. So we can perform some action, or we can start some miming activity, and through those activity we can expand the vocabulary of our students. And framing illustrative sentences, associating with other words, association of one word with the other word can expand the vocabulary of our students. And breaking words into component unities. So this is another method of expanding vocabulary. A big word can be broken into two or three more words. And next is to give some importance on word formation. So we have different types of word formation, prefixes, suffixes, and compounding, blending, loan words. So with the help of word formation you can expand the vocabulary of our students. And next is word games. So there are several language games which can be used for developing the vocabulary of the students. So the teacher can utilize the language games, and through the games we can make the students to develop or expand their vocabulary. And next is giving equivalent in mother tongue. So sometimes the teacher can give some equivalent word in mother tongue so that the students can think in their regional language, and they can expand their vocabulary in English. Okay, and the last one is encourage the students to use the dictionary. So the teacher should always encourage the students to use the dictionary and find out the meaning of a new word, and also to find out the synonym of that particular word. Okay, so these are some of the methods or techniques through which we can expand the vocabulary of our students. So today we have seen about the different types of vocabulary: active and passive vocabulary, content and structural words, and the principle of selection and gradation of vocabulary, and expansion of methods to expand the vocabulary of our students. So I hope you have an idea about what is vocabulary, types of vocabulary, principles of selection and gradation of vocabulary, and techniques to expand the vocabulary of our students. Okay, we will see in the another class.